28th episode of LivTalks, the most fun, entertaining, educational web series out there. We have been everywhere in these 27 episodes. We haven't been in Milan too, but we couldn't be back in Milan without talking to Laura tonight about love, plague, and the betrothed Milanese times, which actually makes complete sense right now as we're living what we're living. So I couldn't be happier to speak to you, Laura. How you doing?
Yes, I'm here. Very, very welcome. I'm very, very happy to meet you. Also, not face by face, but it will be soon. I'm here waiting for you and also, drinking something. So that's a typical Italian aperitivo, The Brits, obviously, I drink at home for the moment, waiting to drink soon with you in the next future. I hope so.
Absolutely. So here is the first picture you chose.
Okay, this is our most famous, most popular Italian novelist and writer ever. And he was a Milanese. The name is Alessandro Manzoni. Probably also who are joining us for the tour, our live talk. They don't know who Manzoni was, but he was extremely popular. Imagine that all the students in Italy, high school, they must study the contents, chapter by chapter, the contents of the Betrothed. And Betrothed are just only the best known novel he wrote in his long life, because Manzoni, was born in 1784 and he died in 1873. So basically, really, he crossed over all the most important moments, times of the unification of Italy. And so he wrote poems, he wrote novels, and the novel of the Betrothed is at least the best known. Every Italian must study the Betrothed at school. Every Italian. Yes.
E fu, siccome immobile, dato il mortal sospiro. Just to make everybody aware, this is really in everybody's education in Italy. That was a poem by Manzoni called...
Exactly. He wrote that, also in memory of Napoleon, so when Napoleon died, and that was just the first moment, the first useness of Alessandro Manzoni, because then in his long stay living in the city where he was born, in Milan, he wrote the Betrothed, in Italian, the title of the novel is I Promessi Sposi, first edition, 1827. I remind you that the first carboneria in Italian are the first protests, the first secret moments, secret ways to decide, to fight against the Austrian rulers, especially in northern Italy. Okay, so that was the period, because first people started to meet around 1821 with the Carboneria, and the first edition of the Betrothed was in 1827. So with the very, very different steps, Manzoni decided many times to revise the total story, with the final, release of that in 1842. So the Promessi Sposi.
Manzoni was not only a very successful and prominent writer and author of both novels and poems, but also an active politician. And so along with his double career, however, he had a pretty dramatic life. He suffered from some illnesses and saw a lot of his family members pass away. He suffered a lot of funerals.
Exactly. There is a sort of contrast in between how he was active, producing, working, learning every day, and the life. He had a lot of, he had a big family, but big percent of the sons died also. He had also two wives. The first one died when she was still Enrichetta Blondello, when She was still very young. And so a big percent of the Manzoni's life passed writing alone at home, you know, in a nice home. We say casa museo.
Mhm.
That's one of the topics, you know, where we take our visitors, Italian visitors, but not only Italian visitors in Milan, because the house where Manzoni lived a long part of his time is still now not far from our Duomo Cathedral, the Duomo in Milan. So not far from there, there is a nice square, little square, pretty hidden, silent square near the Duomo, Piazza Belgioioso, where you can still visit the home and museum where Alessandro Manzoni lived.
He was a great researcher, and he was pretty amazed by somebody's writing talking about not being able or blocking a wedding. That's just, what an
Exactly.
inspiration for a novel.
Exactly. You know, I like to introduce you Renzo e Lucia. You can see in the picture them because the story of the betrothed, you know, turns all around the adventures of Renzo and Lucia. But in which time, in which moment of the history of Italy, not in the times of Manzoni, not in the actual times of Manzoni. We were talking about the process of unification of Italy, the independence of Italy, but in another time, 200 years before that moment. So during the 17th century, when all the area of Milan and Lake Como, so that's the total backdrop of the story, all this area was ruled by stranger, very aggressive rulers, the Spanish ones. So Manzoni basically decided to choose a love story because finally that's a love story in between Renzo and Lucia. Renzo and Lucia are planning to wed soon, but they cannot. Now we go to talk about the obstacles. They go to find chapter by chapter in the story of the betrothed, but we talk about the 17th century. Why? Oppressive rulers. In the case of the story, in the case of the plot, we talk about the aggressive rulers, you know, of the 17th century. So the Spanish. But it's obvious he's going to try to make a parallel. He's trying to compare what is going on, what was going on during the 17th century with the Spanish rulers and it was going on during his life. I mean, the rulers, you know, keeping the power in Milan, keeping the power in all the north of Italy, also the Austrians. Obviously, Alessandro Manzoni was not able, you know, to talk clearly, to protest clearly against the oppressors of his times. And so he decided to also work a bit as an archivist. So going to find the stories of over 200 years before him, and to go to make a sort of a parallel. So when he is saying, oh, how the life of Renzo Lucia is sad because the oppressors, the Spanish oppressors are there, the, you know, underlined protest of Manzoni was to talk about his times in Milan. So the oppression of the Austrian rulers. That's very interesting because obviously all who read the novel the first time immediately realized that this is a parallel, obviously.
This is amazing. I mean, he's obviously trying to send a political message. He takes a love story that he clearly has researched about from 200 years before. He develops it, but makes sure that the language or the message is applicable, even though it's 200 years before, to his present time. So my next question would be, what was the reaction at that time to reading the novel of Renzo?
The reaction was a total enthusiasm. So the book was, you know, was translated in many different languages, and he was able to make of the book a classic. That was true. very soon, and at the same time, to, work on an excellent treaty about the history of the northern Italy in the 17th, because you know that many contents of the novel are based on real stories, real documents.
Yeah.
He was able to pick more and more, but at the same time, the novel was considered a great novel also for another reason, because Manzoni worked a lot on the language. As I told you, Italy was not yet the Italy we mean now, the total boot of Italy with the islands. Not yet. Italy was still signed by different dialects. Different dialects. So he said, okay, the base will be the Lombard dialect. Okay, because I'm Lombard, I live in Milan, I'm Milanese, but I go as well to clean up, he said, my clothes in the Arno River in Tuscany, in Florence, to give a sort of Tuscan topping over the language of the Promessi Sposi. This is another interesting aspect, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
So I was introducing you the Renzo and Lucia, the lovers. Here, the painting you can see is very interesting because we can see them very, very happy, going to get married. But we know that this is just the happy end. What is interesting in the painting you can see there is the backdrop, because they are going on in along a sort of track over the Lake Como, because a big percent of the story goes on around the Grigne, so the steep peaks of the eastern shores of the Lake Como, and obviously Milan. Milan, the area around Bergamo. But here we can see them. So we go to see two, a couple, which was very simple. Manzoni didn't choose two, a noble girl or a noble man. No, he chose a peasant, because Renzo, at least, is a young peasant, and he chose Lucia, Lucia, a very, very simple, devout, shy girl who was employed in a spinning mill as a silk weaver. What happened? They are very happy. They are going to be ready for their wedding, but something very sad goes on, because the tyrant, of the area where they live, we can talk about the small village of Pescarenico. Pescarenico is on the eastern shores, not far from Lecco, one of the most important towns of the lake. Over there, that tyrant falls in love. He starts a sort of harassment. In love with Lucia, okay, and for that reason, he ordered that the wedding cannot go on. Questo matrimonio non sa da fare. So the very shy priest, charged about the wedding, cannot do the wedding anymore. For that reason, they try to arrange a sort of secret wedding to avoid the trouble, but unfortunately they cannot, at least, and so they have to escape. They have to escape. There is a chapter, probably that's the best known ever, of the story of the Promessi Sposi, Addio Monti, farewell to the mountains, very, very sad and breathtaking, where Lucia, taking a boat, taking her away from the lake, is there crying and thinking, I don't know, maybe I'll be able to see my beloved mountains once again in my life, but really, I don't know when. And so while Lucia is obliged to escape through and, by boat on Lake Como, Renzo also has to escape. And so he will be in Milan twice. Because basically they cannot stay together for the moment. They have to meet later to be able to get married. And also Renzo, very shy, not so able to, manage his life. He was a peasant, so not so clever, able to live in a city so big, so large as Milan. In Milan, goes to, to suffer a lot of troubles. Huh? Now
Yes,
we are
no,
not
yeah.
here to we are not here to explain all the stars, because
No,
otherwise we also go to
it's a long book, but the point
yeah.
is that after this early happy beginning, a series of traumatic events happen.
Exactly, go on, exactly.
And these
So
traumatic events belong to the two characters, um, in a way, somewhat Shakespearean, but then it regards, very closely, at least on Renzo's side, what we are living right now, right?
exactly. Here you are. This is a picture I decided to show you the aspects of the Lake Como in the moment of the Renzo and Lucia story, but also when, Alessandro Manzoni was also there. Huh? So this is to give you an idea about the small villages of the story. Obviously, now the aspect, the backdrop of the Lake Como is totally different. It's no longer like there, but somewhere hidden you can still find the small villages like this one. I show you something curious, because and this is what I really hope for you, if we will meet again, really, face by face in Italy, and I'll be so lucky to take you to the Lake Como together. I'm also local guide on Lake Como. I'll show you the boat you can see on the shores of the lake, because
Oh,
the typical local boat of the Lake Como is called Lucia, not by chance.
huh.
Lucia, so the name really actually comes from the name of Lucia, so in the Betrothed.
Interesting.
And here we are, and that's one we talk about the last chapters, and the image you can see there is the reason why I choose the story I'm talking about now. Because these are the very sad and breathtaking chapters about the plague in Milan. We know that in the past, the plague was able to kill over the 50% of people. So imagine what a disaster. And obviously, many Italians, me too, in this sad period with the COVID-19, we were here also reading again
Yeah.
stories, talking about something very similar happening in the past. And the plague was also sadly similar. The image you can see there shows you the Lazaretto. What is the Lazaretto? The Lazaretto is was in the past a special hospital, conceived express for who was affected by the Black Plague. So people were very effective, okay? So they were obliged to stay totally isolated by the rest of the city, exactly like we do now, unfortunately, with who suffered the coronavirus. And so over there you can see that special hospital. Imagine that Milan in Europe was one of the first building something similar. I give you just an idea. In all of the Mediterranean Sea, also around Greece, in Venice, they were luckier because by a small island, they were able to isolate them on an island, Lazaretto Vecchio, Lazaretto Nuovo, also in Venice. In Milan, they said, okay, we go to plan, that special hospital outside the city walls, far from everything, far from the city, also the city gates, the city walls of the city, and that will be X square. Exactly, the red line shows you the city walls, you know, somewhere surviving, you know, in Milan. And what you can see there was the square of the Lazaretto. Imagine that the side was more or less in feet. It was 1,200 feet in total. So it was really a huge hospital, you know, created in the late 15th century. So just to give you an idea, if you know just something about Leonardo da Vinci and also the Leonardo da Vinci's times in Milan, because Leonardo was still in Milan when they planned the Lazaretto, all made with bricks and arcades, okay? By the way, in all of the northern side of the Lazaretto, something survives, because in a street in Milan called Via San Gregorio, we still have a portion of the side of the former Lazaretto. You know that that's used still now by the Orthodox community of Milan. That's funny, huh? This is the only portion which survives still now. The Lazaretto survived a long time, but then with all the restylings of the city, it was finally, not that part, but all the rest, the other three sides were demolished, definitely around the 1870s, you know, in the city. I show you just another detail to give a couple of details very quickly. In the north, you can see another smaller square, and in the south, a door, a gate, a sort of gate. It's very sad, I know, but two very different gates. The gate in the south, exactly that one down there in the image, was called Porta Netta in Italian. That means the white gate, the clean gate. So all healed people, you know, after the Black Plague, happy and you know, excited. Okay, I'm now okay. After all that, this terrible disease, I can go out, and I go, and then I'm able to go back to the city through the city gates. Happy end. Unfortunately, that one on the north, it was totally different. That was the Porta Nera, the black gates, taking to another fence. You can see a sort of other area, another square, and that was the cemetery. So unfortunately, big percent of people didn't survive. And that was the gate out of the black gate. In Italian, we say, in ironic but also sad way, a piedi in su, with the feet up, because they were no longer alive.
Your feet first, we say.
Feet first, exactly.
The curiosity that was coming through my mind was that we are obviously building COVID-19 hospitals right now. In China, they did it in whatever, 10 days. And here in Italy, we're trying to, or at least we're transforming hospitals to be only COVID-19, and we're doing quite quickly. But obviously, when you're doing something like that, you're also applying all sorts of measures so that you can contain the contagion. So even doctors wearing super masks and gloves and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Was there any awareness of that in Lazaretto? Would the nurses and doctors working there aware of how contagious plague was, or really?
Yeah, you know, probably, and probably also who is now joining us by the LivTalks, that in Venice, for example, they created the bauta. The bauta is a special mask used to keep the right distance, okay? That was not true everywhere. For example, in Milan, we don't know anything so clear about something like the bauta.
Yeah.
But it's also true that people had to keep the right distance. And so for that reason, if you notice in the image, in the middle, right in the middle of the Lazaretto, you can see a small church. Also, that church still survives in Milan. Is the church of San Carlo al Lazaretto. That church keeps 8 sides with 8 doors. Now just 2 doors, 2 gates survive, but in the past, imagine 8 arcades. So the church was open air, we can say, to make all people, you know, in bed, able in the distance to see the priest making the service. That was the Church of San Carlo. Ecco, this is something showing you the Lazaretto later. So that's a photo, if you notice, not just a plan. Lazaretto, so that's much more recent because obviously during the 19th century, 17th and 19th century, fortunately, the Black Plague disease was no longer you know, a disaster like in the past. And so for that reason, that area was used as well as a free market or, you know, as a sort of place where also the homeless were staying. So for that reason, it was no longer considered a hygienic, you know, place to keep in the city. In the meanwhile, Milan was, you know, still squeezed in the city walls, so they decided to demolish them, to extend Milan more and more. And so for that reason, finally, the 80% of the Lazaretto was demolished.
This is an aerial picture of the Lazaretto.
Exactly. This is even more clear because, you know, I show you a funny detail. So I'm going to cry showing you that detail because you can see the main streets, the main road facing the Lazaretto, they are down, one of the sides of the Lazaretto, with also tramways going on. This is what now we call Corso Buenos Aires Street. One, you know, Buenos Aires is approximately 1 mile long, so it's one of our longest avenues in Milan, full of stores. It's considered one of our shopping streets ever in Milan. Now every store is closed, unfortunately, but imagine it usually full of cars now moving, full of people walking, strolling in the street. So the face of that street is totally different than this one you can see, and that's very strong to me also because it's very, very close to my house, where you can see this room, my apartment. I live 5 minutes away the Lazaretto, in Loreto Square, a square not far from there, not far from the central station in Milan. And here, that's another sad page of the story. Sad moment, but probably one of the most popular ever, with the, you know, the story of the Addio Monti. I just explained you, farewell to the mountains, because it's the story of Cecilia. As I told you, Renzo isn't shy and not so clever. You know, in Milan suffers a lot of troubles. The second time he comes back to Milan because he finally needs to meet Lucia. He knows that Lucia somewhere in the city is in Milan. She's somewhere, but he doesn't know where exactly. So he decides, okay, I go back again to Milan. I already know something about the city, so I'll be able to find her. He arrives, he goes through the same city gates of the first time, around Porta Venezia. Imagine him walking through Manzoni Street. You know, Manzoni Street was a very, very popular street. Now Manzoni, Monte Napoleone are the streets of our fashion district in Milan. So imagine the gap. He goes on, and the city is a desert. Renzo only feels the silence, the total silence, the silence of the death of all people because of the Black Plague. So he doesn't meet, you know, anyone. Total silence. Somewhere in the street, he only goes to see dead people in the street, you know, there. And in that total silence, more and more walking, you know, Manzoni is incredibly clear to describe what is going on. Manzoni follows, you know, where Renzo is moving as a sort of camera, really, like in a movie. We can follow him moving in the street, and at least he goes to hear a sort of noise. That's a bell signing the passage of the Monatti. The Monatti, Monatto is pretty impossible to translate in Italian, in English, sorry. We can say the grave digger.
Yeah.
to try to translate, because
Yeah.
the Monato was that one picking, you know, the dead people. Huh? The Monato was a man, usually already, you know, healed by the Black Plague, so he was not infected anymore. And with other people, he was charged to go to, you know, also collecting money to do that, obviously. He was charged to go to pick dead people street by street, charging the bodies on chariots or on carts, exactly like the cart you can see described in the picture, in the image you can see. So Renzo stops, totally, you know, shocked, but all what he's going to see, and he goes to see just a scene. At that moment, Manzoni, in his description, goes much more slower. He goes to describe every single detail about what is going on and what's going on. You can see a woman going out of the door, or there on the left, keeping a child, keeping a little girl, or no more than 8, 9 years old. She's Cecilia. Cecilia's dead. But the woman, the mother of Cecilia, we don't know her name. We only say la mamma di Cecilia, the mother of Cecilia, is desperate, obviously, but as the last gesture of love, she totally prepared the body of the little girl, cleaning of the body, you know, combing her hair perfectly, and wearing her a white dress. Manzoni stops to describe how that dress is white, to describe the purity of that poor girl, unfortunately, you know, killed by the plague. And that desperate women, desperate, but, you know, very clever as well, she's there meeting the Monato, you know, and saying him, okay, take my daughter, please keep her away from the other dead people, and go, please, if you can, to, you know, bury her apart. We know that that was pretty impossible because we only talk about mass graves. So it was pretty impossible to bury her apart, but the mother of Cecilia tries to ask this, the Monato, and we know, giving him a coin and saying it as well, when the story goes to end, saying, okay, do that please, and tonight come back to pick me up and to pick my little daughter here with me as well, because we are going to die both shortly in the evening. So sorry, but also to me that's so
No.
breathtaking, because the description is incredibly clear. Clear. It's like to be there with them.
And you did it exactly, and you did it wonderfully. There's just too many similarities.
Exactly.
To what is going on right now, especially in places like Milan or Bergamo or New York, where,
exactly.
Milan, for that matter, where COVID-19 has hit the hardest, and it hit so fast and so abruptly that even nowadays we had to use mass graves. We had not the ability to say goodbye to our beloved ones.
Exactly. What is incredible is that the mother of Lucia was able to say, goodbye, my dear, goodbye, my love. And because of the terrible COVID-19, they cannot.
Because yes, of course, because of social distancing, we can't. But in reality, not even La Mamma di Cecilia is able to really say goodbye with a proper funeral or proper burial or time to grieve.
Absolutely.
So there's enormous similarity, and in a way, whether, there's conspiracy of the fact that it may not have been true, but when Bergamo um, was driven into by military trucks to pick up the too many bodies that they had to bring them down to Civitavecchia and other places in Italy to be buried. It's it's basically the modern picture of this picture and this description that Manzoni gives us. And what Renzo saw while walking around stupidly, because he shouldn't have been there walking around, is exactly what we saw on camera, on video camera, on newspaper, on TV.
Exactly. And what is also really incredible is the description of the silence.
Yeah, exactly.
That total silence. Also, to me, that was incredible because, as I told you, I live near Buenos Aires street, full of cars, full of jams, full of noise, every day.
Yeah.
And now that's going to be better. But the first day, the first weeks of March, the silence, especially by night, the silence was terrible.
Yeah.
I never, heard the silence, the sound of silence in the real sense.
Yeah.
Yes. And here you can see another one. This is another simply point of view of the same.
Yeah. But it's the same story.
Yeah, the same story where you can guess just another point of view, because, by the way, on the left, you can see Renzo watching what is going on, because that boy...
This is Renzo right here?
Exactly. That one is Renzo. He's there watching what is going on in front of him with the mother of Lucia, the Monato. The Monato is that one you can see on the extreme right of the image. Here you are, exactly. And the mother of Lucia is there, keeping. And Manzoni also describes another detail which is incredible. The mother of Lucia tries to keep Lucia in, Cecilia, not Lucia, Cecilia, because Lucia is, one of the betrothed. Cecilia, the girl, the young girl who died there, the mother of Cecilia is there trying to keep her in her arms with the illusion that she's still alive. That's another detail that Manzoni describes very well. And that's even more sad and more intense. Story.
It was honestly, truly great to have you tonight here. Thank you, Laura. Interesting subject and great storytelling. I couldn't agree more. You really had us envision Manzoni's words as if it was an audiobook almost. So I appreciate your generosity and thank you again. I'll let you say good evening to everybody here.
Okay, I thank you a lot. I'm very, very happy that you appreciated, and I'm very happy that you were able to see with me, to imagine with me something about the story of the Promessi Sposi. I'm just something funny to end. You know that all the students in Italy hate the Promessi Sposi, and I also tell you why, because they are obliged to study the Promessi Sposi, but then when you are 30, 35, 40 and more, you go to read and read again, and you learn to love them a lot because the stories are universal.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Laura. Good evening to everybody. Ciao.
Thank you for everything. Ciao.